and welcome everyone. So today's video is a guide to 60s and 70s shoes. I'm gonna tell you all about the most popular shoe styles of the two decades, their history, why they were so on trend during that time period, and also some ideas on how you can style them. I'm also gonna share a big part of my own shoe collection with you. However, I already made a video with my full shoe collection, which I gotta admit I have to update sometime, but I'm gonna link that video here for you if you wanna see all of the amazing shoes that I have. I personally just love to collect 60s and 70s shoes, and the 60s and 70s were an amazing time period for shoes, with a lot of different styles of shoes being in fashion, and actually a big variety of different materials, styles, shapes, and patterns. So without further ado, let's start the 60s and 70s shoe guide. So generally spoken, the 60s were the decade of the young. With the Cultural Revolution and the sexual liberation, the young people of the time were really the ones making all of the trends. So while the 50s were all about a very feminine look, the 60s style made flat shoes for women popular again. They were comfortable, they were easy to walk, they were great for an on-the-go look, and they just fitted that modern 60s lifestyle. During the 60s, shoes also started to get a lot cheaper because they were made out of plastics and other materials. So all of a sudden, people had a lot more shoes, and shoes were just way more accessible for the wider mass. And with the new materials such as PVC, new shapes, styles, and colors also became a huge trend. The 60s was also the decade of short skirts and short dresses, which really made shoes a big standout piece and kind of more of a focal point of fashion rather than being an accessory. So because the 60s were all about shorter hemlines, women started to put their knees together while sitting and their feet apart, kind of like Patty Boyd on the cover of her biography. So sitting like that also draws a lot of attention to the feet, which was another reason for shoes becoming such a big trend in the 60s and 70s. First style of shoes that was super popular during the 60s are loafers. College loafers or schoolgirl loafers like these were easy to wear, they were super classic, and they go great with a mod look. So the mod look was really all about wearing short hemlines and flat shoes, so loafers like these go great with it. They were also often worn with white tights or knee-high socks, and they were especially popular among younger girls. Probably one of the most famous pair of 60s shoes were the classic Mary Jane boots, like these ones. They really work great for that 60s doll-like look that was really youthful, and with their shiny materials really catered towards that doll-like look. So in the 1920s and 1930s, Mary Janes like these were dance shoes, and they kind of had a comeback in the 60s, but this time not as a dance shoe, but as more of an everyday shoe for women. They were often made out of shiny black materials, and then they're most famous for the little strap they have right here. So Mary Janes were popular in black, in white, some of them had a little heel, like these ones have, but the heels were pretty wide and not too high, which overall was amazing for that 60s swinging London miniskirt look. So during the 60s, the strap up here kind of became wider and wider, and by the mid-60s, the buckles were also getting a lot bigger. Another famous 60s shoes were T-strap heels, like these ones. So they're characterized by having a stacked mid-sized heel. They're kind of almond-shaped at the toes, and then they have thin straps like these ones. So these ones will forever have a special place in my heart because they were one of my first pair of vintage shoes. I think white T-strap shoes are amazing for a 60s look, and also the stacked heel, so that kind of striped design, was super popular in the 60s, and it's also what kind of transformed into the platform shoe in the 70s. Moving on with another super popular 60s style of shoes, the so-called pilgrim pump. So they're characterized by a blunt, square toed, which is also called a chisel toe, and they're kind of similar to shoes worn by both men and women in the 17th century. So most of the pilgrim pumps, like the ones that I have right here, are characterized by that buckle right here in the front. That was super popular. However, during the decade, the pilgrim pump became a lot more diverse, with a lot of different styles of patterns and designs becoming super popular. So I also have this pair, which is absolutely one of my favorite pairs. They're so beautiful, so comfortable. That's also a great thing about pilgrim pumps. They don't really have a big heel, and the heel that they have is really thick, so it's super easy to walk and very comfortable. And as you can see, they don't have a buckle, but they more have this like beautiful little lacy detailing, and they're so gorgeous and just perfect for a 60s look. So pilgrim pumps were also super popular with mod fashion, and some of them even had a Union Jack design, which was pretty much the epitome of mod fashion in the 60s. Another style of shoe that actually got popular in the 50s but still was trendy in the 60s 60s are the kitten heel. So they are kind of a smaller heel and then they have this really particular kitten heel shape. These ones are T-straps, they are not vintage, but they really have that classic 50s look. And a lot of kitten heels, especially with a sling back, were super popular in the 60s. However, they were kind of more popular with the grown-ups and not too much with the youth culture and the kind of hip and on-trend people of the 60s. So obviously during the 60s, the classic heel was also in fashion, but people kind of started experimenting with it and added new twists and designs to it. So heels like this gorgeous pair that I have were highly inspired by space age fashion with a silvery kind of futuristic design. The 60s were really a time where silver as a shoe color became pretty popular, and these are just a great example of a very classic shoe design kind of taking on space age fashion. So one thing that was super influential to the 60s fashion was when the Beatles went to India. So in the mid and late 60s, the Beatles went to India to kind of go on a spiritual journey. And when they came back, they didn't only introduce the Western world to new Indian sounds, but they also made Indian fashion extremely popular. So one of the shoe styles that they kind of brought back and that became extremely popular are these kind of loafer slip shoes. So as you can see, they have beautiful detailing, they're super easy to wear, and they were also super popular among hippie fashion. So obviously we cannot talk about 60s shoes without mentioning the boots. The boot was one of the absolute biggest trend of the 1960s, with a lot of different materials and styles being very on trend. So wearing knee-high boots with short skirts and short dresses is pretty much the signature 60s look. And a lot of people, when they think about the 60s, that is the look they think of. So materials like PVC became extremely popular in the 60s because they were waterproof, they were super easy to color, and they were also cheap and affordable. And that is what really made PVC the #1 material for shoes in the 60s. So the two most popular boot styles of the 60s were black PVC boots like these ones. As you can see, they have that shiny PVC look. They have a small heel. I absolutely love them. The kind of square toe was also pretty popular at the time. These are also very special to me because these were also one of the first pairs of vintage shoes I ever had. I love them. They're so comfortable. I wear them all year round. And then obviously another extremely popular shoe style of the time were the classic white go-go boots. They are pretty much the epitome of 60s fashion. I actually made a video all about how to style them. Gonna link that here for you. But basically, they're classic white PVC boots. They kind of have a medium height heel, and especially their crisp white look was what made them so popular in the time. So mod shoes also experimented with a lot of different styles of boots. So there were PVC boots printed with different patterns, or boots where like one side of the boot was blue and the other side was yellow. And then there was also the trend of wearing your left shoe in one color and then the right shoe in another color. I think this is such an amazing and expressive and individual style, and I absolutely love that about the 60s. As said before, in the 60s, space age was a huge theme. So kind of fueled by the moon landing in 1969, people were so excited about the moon and space age in general that it really influenced the pop culture a lot. Movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey also really catered towards that whole space trend and hype, and it was also a heavy influence on fashion, with boots being silver, golden, and just kind of looking galactic in general. Another classic boot style that kind of made a comeback in the 60s were lace-up boots like these ones. So lace-up boots like these were originally popular in the beginning of the 20th century, but they really had a big comeback in the 60s, and they kind of stayed popular with the whole witchy fashion of the 70s, with people like singer Stevie Nicks of Fleetwood Mac wearing them and looking absolutely gorgeous in them. Another big trend of the 60s were cuissard boots, which I hope I said that right, or over-the-knee boots in general. They were made after 18th century soldiers' riding boots, and a lot of women liked to wear them with short skirts for a super powerful look. So dressing powerful was really something extremely new in the 60s, and women wanted to empower themselves by wearing really strong outfits, and black over-the-knee boots became extremely popular for that style. So mine are actually great to explain another 60s boot trend, the stretchy boot. So essentially a boot that was only firm around the foot, and then other than that was pretty much only made out of fabric or stretchy PVC, so that it would really fit extremely tight around the calves, the ankles, and pretty much the whole leg. So obviously during the 60s, the classic suede boot was also big in fashion, and these are actually really special to me too. These are just original 60s suede heels. I absolutely love them. If you want to know the story on how I got them, watch that shoe collection video because it's a very special story. But these are So comfortable, they're really classic for the time because of the small, thick heel that they have, and then just being fitted to the knees. So these boots actually connect two really famous 60s style in boots, one of them being buckled boots. So the 60s were really a lot about buckles, big belt buckles on dresses, on skirts, on pants, and also on shoes. And then another big trend for 60s boots were a seam down in the middle like these ones have. Obviously, we cannot talk about 60s shoes without talking about booties, especially booties like these ones, which are made from PVC once again, were extremely popular among mod and beatnik fashion. So if you couldn't tell from the video so far, black PVC really was the #1 shoe material of the decade. And if you want to go for a 60s look, or maybe you're just starting out your wardrobe, go for PVC, and especially black PVC, because it's just really perfect for that 60s look. Moving on with a style of shoe, which I think a lot of people don't really know that it was popular in the 60s as well. And a lot of people, I guess, think it's more of a 90s thing, but they were so popular in the 60s as well. Black Doc Martens. Classic black Doc Marten work boots were essentially made for workers, but during the 60s a lot of people started to participate in what was called working class pride. So basically people weren't ashamed anymore of being working class, but they were kind of proud of it. And one of the first people to wear Doc Martens on stage and kind of being really proud of being working class was Pete Townshend of The Who. He wore them on stage in the 60s, and obviously at the turn of the decade, punk fashion emerged and became extremely popular. And if you know a bit about punk fashion, you know that Doc Martens are absolutely huge in punk fashion. So next up I would like to talk a bit about 60s sneakers. I feel like not a lot of people associate the 60s with sneakers, and I gotta be honest with you, they weren't really that popular. However, especially schoolgirls kind of tended to wear sneakers every now and then, and a popular style were cat sneakers, which are kind of made from a fabric, so it was really all about keeping that fabric super crisp and clean, and that was really easy because you can just throw them in the washing machine and they come out looking pretty much brand new. So cats were often styled with white tights or white knee-high socks, and also worn with mini skirts and mini dresses, but also worn with a lot of long pants. Originally designed as an orthopedic shoe, Birkenstocks had a big break in the 60s. So Birkenstock, the company that makes those shoes, is from Germany, and they actually started making shoes in the 18th century, but they really had their big break in the 60s when a lot of hippies started to wear Birkenstocks. They are super comfortable, they're really accessible, they come in a lot of different styles. However, all sorts of suede leathers or just the classic ones with the two straps were extremely popular in the 60s. And if you know a bit about 60s history, you might know that the whole women's rights movement and the whole equality movement was really big during that time. So Birkenstocks were also popular because they were both worn by men and women. So I think Birkenstocks are great if you're starting out a 60s and 70s wardrobe because they're so versatile. I personally gotta say I don't really love to wear them because I don't really always like the look of them. However, they are so comfortable, they're great if you do a lot of walking. A couple of years ago I actually traveled through Indonesia, 5 weeks of traveling on my feet in a pair of Birkenstocks, and I had the best time ever. Not once were my feet sore or hurted or anything, they were just amazing. So if you're planning on doing something like that or going to a festival and you really want to take a pair of shoes with you that is super easy to put on, that you can slide in and out, and that is extremely comfortable, I would highly recommend you to go for a pair of Birkenstocks. So before talking about 70s shoes, I would like to talk about one more style of shoes that I personally love a lot. And that is the trend of that kind of medieval sandal meets boot kind of style. It's really hard to explain. I'm gonna put some pictures up right here. But basically, sandals that kind of go up to your knees and then they have some sort of tight or lacy detail. I think they're so gorgeous. I am still looking for a pair. I would love, love, love to get a pair. I think they're so gorgeous, so unique, and just perfect for the time period. They're so special and you don't really see them anymore, and I think they're so unique and gorgeous. They came in so many different shapes and sizes, and I'm kind of thinking about maybe taking a pair of my other shoes and turning them into those sandals, because finding a pair of sandals like this one is really extremely rare. So if you would like to see a video like this, make sure to leave a comment down below and I will try to figure something out. But if you can get your hands on a pair of shoes like that, get it, get it, get it. They are super rare, they're extremely gorgeous, and they're just perfect for that unique 60s look. So talking about 70s shoes, I think there's one thing that comes to mind pretty much immediately, and that is platforms. Platform shoes were the trend of the decade for both men and women, and pretty much everyone wore and loved them. From David Bowie to the Runaways, to the whole glam rock community, hard rock community, punk, everyone loved platform shoes. They came in a lot of different styles and shapes and sizes, and people just really loved them. So a very classic style of 70s platform shoes were disco platforms. These don't really have that much of a platform, to be real, but the silver really makes them perfect for that 70s disco look. They remind me so much of Bianca Jagger, and I really love them. If you've ever taken a closer look at Elton John's outfits, you might know that the 70s were all about a super wild and unique and out there type of shoe, and so I have these ones. Absolutely love them. They're so gorgeous. That kind of unique design up here. I love the platform. Also, the fact that all of these are platforms make them so super easy and comfortable to walk in. So shoes like these were also extremely popular. Another beloved style of platform shoes by both men and women were those kind of platforms. Super thick heel, very tall boot, very chunky, absolutely gorgeous, and a real 70s staple. So obviously sandals were also a big trend in the 70s, and they were also really big, high platforms. A lot of them were wedges like these ones. These are actually really special to me because these are also a quite rare pair of shoes with that really cool kind of wooden looking heel that is kind of carved into. They're so special and gorgeous. They have this beautiful little fabric right here, and sandals like these were extremely popular in the 70s. They were also worn by muses such as Anita Pallenberg and a lot of other fashion icons of the time. Talking about wooden heels, they were a big trend of the 70s. I have two pairs right here. I have a couple more pairs, to be real with you, just because I love them so much. They're so comfortable to walk in. They're actually made out of wood. I don't know why people get so confused with that. I know the idea is kind of weird at first, but they're so comfortable to walk. I absolutely love them. I have this white pair that is so classic and beautiful. I also have this amazing black pair, which once again reminds me a lot of Anita Pallenberg, and shoes like these were also often worn with tights or knee-high socks underneath them. Another style of wooden shoes that were super popular in the 70s were clogs. So basically wooden platform shoes where you can kind of slide into. But just like the 60s, the 70s also had a big love for PVC, so PVC clogs were also a big trend. I have these white ones. They're also kind of that cloud style where they really round in the front. I absolutely love that, and they were a big trend in the 70s. And then also these kind of clogs meet sandal kind of shoes. I don't really know how to describe them, but they were also really trendy in the 70s. As you can see, they have a lot of like cutouts, and then they're pretty much open in the back other than having that little strip. And another big trend of the 70s were these giant heels. So even though these aren't platform, they kind of have that really chunky 70s heel that was super popular at the time. So I talked about those little Indian slide moccasin shoes before, and then also Birkenstocks, and then also a lot of hippie like to go barefoot, but actually the 70s had some more hippie shoes in storage. So one really popular style of 70s hippie shoes were actually boots made from suede leather, like these ones that I have. As you can see, they have that chunky 70s heel. They kind of have a bit of platform to them, and they're just perfect for a 70s look. In true hippie fashion, a lot of people wore them with long dresses and flowy outfits, but they were just pretty popular in the 70s in general. So this next style of shoe was pretty popular during the late 60s and the 70s, and whenever I wear them either on Instagram or on my YouTube, people have really mixed feelings about them, but basically they're cowboy boots. I absolutely love them. The 60s and 70s hippie fashion was all about going back to nature materials. So wooden shoes, all sorts of leather shoes, all sorts of straw shoes were pretty popular, and so were cowboy boots. So just like during the 60s, during the 70s, boots were also extremely popular. However, during the 70s, they kind of got a bit more wilder, louder, and outrageous. And also a lot more experimental. So one really big trend of the 70s were velvet boots, like these ones that I have. They're so gorgeous and amazing, and I feel like they're so special. So velvet was a big trend during the 60s and 70s in general, but velvet boots especially were super popular during the 70s. 70s boots obviously also were all about having platforms. I have these ones that are so tall, so gorgeous. They're from the 70s. I love the detailing. They're so cool and special. And just like my other 70s shoes, these are really easy to walk in because of the platform. Also, buckled boots were really much still in fashion, but they got a lot more wilder with new textures like snakeskin, velvet, embroidered shoes, hand-painted shoes. All of that became just such a big trend in the 70s. I have these snakeskin boots. I love them. I think they're so great for kind of that more rockstar, cool girl 70s look. They're so cool and so unique. So embroidered boots were super popular as well during the 70s. I'm gonna put up a picture right here of pretty much the most famous embroidered shoe of the time. Sometimes people sell these on Etsy or somewhere and they go for like $700, $800, sometimes even more than $1,000 or $2,000 because they're so rare and gorgeous. They were also worn by Kate Hudson as Penny Lane and Almost Famous, and they're just so gorgeous. So I'm still dreaming about one day being able to afford a pair of these, but they're just so gorgeous and unique, and sometimes I just really like to look at them because for me these are pretty much one of the most gorgeous pairs of shoes I've ever seen. So obviously during the 70s people also wore sneakers. Converse kind of got around and they became super popular, especially their white classic Converse. And then also Nike Cortez became extremely popular because actress Farrah Fawcett was advertising them and they just look so amazing on her. I've been thinking about getting a pair of Nike Cortez for quite a while now. I've got to be real with you, I don't own a single pair of sneakers just because I don't really like the look. However, back when I was still in school and I was kind of depending on having a pair of sneakers, I had a pair of white Converse. I really liked them, but they fell apart at one point, so I had to get rid of them. So now I'm really thinking about maybe getting a pair of Nike Cortez because I kind of like how they look, but I don't really know if I'll get a lot of wear out of them, so I still have to think about that. So because I'm talking about Nike now and I haven't really talked about that yet, I would like to quickly touch on the topic of sustainable fashion here. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you know that I'm really big on sustainability in general. All of the clothing that I have are either from small businesses and sustainably made or second-handed, and the same goes for all of my shoes. I also live vegan and I would never ever buy a new pair of leather shoes. With the Doc Martens that I have, for example, these are actually the vegan ones, and all the other shoes that I just showed you I either got handed down from people in my family or I bought second-handed. And if you're looking for any sort of boot style like these, please try to go for a sustainable option. I know that shoes, especially sustainable shoes, can get really expensive, so I would love to encourage you to try Vinted, try Poshmark, try eBay, try Etsy. Try to get a pair of these pre-used because it's really just the most sustainable way. Another 70s shoe trend were ballet flats like the ones that I have right here. Stevie Nicks made them extremely popular. I really love these ones because they have that detailing that goes around your ankle. I think that's so beautiful. I also really like to wear and then tie up a lace around my leg to kind of create the illusion of these sandals that I talked about earlier that I would love to have, but I think they're perfect for a Stevie Nicks inspired look. So obviously pretty much all of the shoes that were really popular during the 60s were also kind of popular in the 70s, such as classic black boots, white shoes in general, nature materials, wooden shoes. All of that was a big trend in the 60s, and the 70s also took a lot of 60s styles and kind of modified them. One example for that would be these kind of shoes where pretty much they're a classic loafer, but then they have a very thick heel. These are probably more from like the late 60s, early 70s. If they were from like the mid 70s to the late 70s, they would have a big platform in the front as well because, as said, plateau and platform shoes were just so trendy in the 70s. But yeah, chunky heels were a big trend in the 70s as well, and that is a lot of 70s looks where it's kind of a very classic shape and then some sort of experimental thick heel platform, extremely interesting look added to it. So yeah, generally speaking, the 70s were kind of like the 60s but with a lot more of platforms and chunkier heels. But the 60s and 70s were when shoes kind of went from like that accessory thing where everyone had one or two pairs of to a big fashion statement. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. I really hope you kind of got a sense in how versatile and diverse 60s and 70s fashion and shoe trends were, because I really love them. They were so extravagant, so unique, and so amazing, and I just really hope I could share my love with you. So I feel like I say that in pretty much all of my videos, but the 60s and 70s were also a lot about customizing your stuff. So people painted on their vests, their jackets, their t-shirts, their pants, and their shoes. So if you ever have a pair of shoes that you don't really like that much anymore, consider painting them. I did it before, so especially if you get a lot of thrifted shoes, sometimes they come in not the greatest condition, so painting them can be great to save them. Also painting the heel of a shoe to give it a more psychedelic look, a more unique look, and just to really make them yours is perfect for a 60s and 70s look. I'd also highly recommend you to check out your local thrift stores if you're looking for shoes, because a lot of the times thrift stores have a lot of great 60s and 70s shoes, because a lot of people don't really like that look. They are often really inexpensive. So if you go thrifting, always make sure to check the shoes, and also always make sure to try them on. Because I've been to the thrift store a couple of times and I found shoes where I was like, I love them, but the stamped on size wasn't mine, and then I tried them on and they fitted me perfectly. So keep in mind that sizing has changed over the years, that not all companies are true to sizing, and always make sure to try on your shoes, because I bet you can find shoes that don't say they're your size, but they actually fit you pretty well. So that wraps up today's video. I really hope you enjoyed the 60s and 70s shoe guide. If you did, I would love you to give it a thumbs up and maybe even share this video with a friend. It supports the channel, it supports me, and it means a lot. Also make sure to leave a comment down below telling me which 60s and 70s style of shoe is your absolute favorite. I would love to know, I would love to talk to you. I read all of my comments and I pretty much reply to all of them. At least I try. So leave a comment down below if you love shoes as much as I do, and we can chat about it. Also, if there's something you want to know about a specific shoe, or you still have some questions about 60s and 70s shoes, leave them in the comments below and I will answer them for you. If you're interested in all things 60s and 70s, the culture, the music, the people, the fashion, the makeup, make sure to subscribe to this channel, because I upload multiple videos every single week all about that, and I would love to have you around. I hope you have an amazing day, go out, enjoy the sunshine, take yourself some time to focus on you and your mental health today, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye guys!